of Lachin corridor. Speaking time in this debate is limited to 3 minutes sharp for all members except the first speaker chosen by the Bureau, who is allowed 7 minutes. In the debate, I first call Mr. Pierre-Alain Frides. Pierre-Alain, vous avez 7 minutes.
You have 7 minutes, Pierre-Alain. Thank you very much indeed, President. The Lachin corridor is a strip of territory about 5 kilometers in width, which connects 65 kilometers of the Armenian border with the territory known as Nagorno-Karabakh, or Artsakh by Armenia, and Karabakh by Azerbaijan. It is a strategic location that was a subject to special provisions during the negotiations that followed the fighting in 2020. The tripartite agreement of the 9th of November 2020 laid down in its Article 6 the obligation for Azerbaijan, which had control of this location, to, and I quote, guarantee the security of persons and vehicles moving in both directions. A blockade of this territory began on the 12th of December last year when Azerbaijani nationals blocked the only road connecting this territory inhabited by some 120,000 Armenians to Armenia, a vital road for this population. The blockade is located in an area that is under the responsibility of the Russian peacekeeping mission. In preparing this intervention, in addition to explanatory letters from both sides, I've relied on the text of a decision handed down by the European Court of Human Rights, which decided on the 21st of December 2022 to take interim measures, asking the government of Azerbaijan to take all measures at their disposal to ensure free passage through the Lachin corridor for persons seriously ill and in need of medical treatment in Armenia, or for persons stranded on the road without shelter or means of subsistence. The issue at the root of the situation, according to Mr. Saidov's letter sent to me, is the Azerbaijani government's formal request in early December to halt the allegedly illegal mining in Nagorno-Karabakh, which is causing environmental damage. This request by the Azeri government has reportedly been ignored, and according to Mr. Saidov's letter, this has caused legitimate indignation among Azeri environmentalists who, since the 12th of December 2022, have been staging, according to him, a peaceful demonstration spontaneously to prevent the use of this road for improper purposes. In the term improper, the Azeri delegation also includes the sending of ammunition and mines to Karabakh by the Armenians. The Azeri side denies all accusations that the road is completely blocked. Medical vehicles, according to them, pass through without any problem, as do 40 to 50 vehicles a day in both directions, transporting food and other essential goods. According to this, therefore, basic humanitarian needs are being met. The situation, however, would seem to be profoundly different according to the information provided to us by the Armenian camp, which considers that there's a real blockade organized by pseudo-demonstrators using mining as a pretext. According to them, everything has been orchestrated by the Baku authorities. According to their version, the Azerbaijani government has blocked the daily import of several hundred tons of essential goods, including basic necessities, food, medicines such as insulin, fuel, products regularly imported into Karabakh from Armenia. The situation is reportedly serious and the humanitarian crisis is worsening daily. The work of social services and access to healthcare are reportedly hampered by the lack of resources, with the most vulnerable, young and old people being put at risk and human suffering becoming more widespread. The shortage of food and other goods is becoming more and more noticeable, with the appearance of ration coupons. In addition, during these cold winter months, there are reports of temporary cuts in gas and electricity supplies, seriously exacerbating the situation of the populations concerned. Thousands of children are being deprived of their right to education. Their schools are being closed down because they have no heating. More than 1,000 people are reportedly blocked along this road, unable to return home. In addition, hundreds of children have been separated from their families. There are reports of disruptions in access to telecommunications and the internet. At times, the population of Nagorno-Karabakh is said to be cut off from all communication with the outside world. According to the Armenians, the corridor is still closed today, with only a few international Red Cross vehicles allowed to transport a limited number of very sick patients to Armenia. For the Armenians, this is therefore a clear violation of the tripartite peace agreement of the 9th of November 2020, which is supposed to ensure full freedom of movement of citizens, vehicles and goods between Armenia and Karabakh through the Lachin corridor. It should be noted that the responsibility for the implementation of this agreement would normally rest with the Russian peacekeeping forces, who have reportedly remained completely passive in the face of this situation. So there are two versions, as always diametrically opposed. We're used to this. But there seems to have been, and there probably still is, a blockade of the Lachin corridor. In addition to the clear position adopted by the European Court of Human Rights on the 21st December last year, which I've already mentioned, and a number of international interventions have occurred. The blockade was raised in the United Nations Security Council on the 20th December 2022 with clear statements made by representatives from France, the UK, China, Russia, Ireland, India, Brazil and Norway. The message from these different countries was unanimous. The reopening of the corridor to avoid an escalation of the situation and a humanitarian crisis. We should also note, among many others, the statement of the 16th of December made by the spokesperson of the United States State Department to express concern about the closure of the corridor, which could have serious humanitarian consequences and cause Azerbaijan to restore free movement in the Lachin corridor. Finally, on the 19th of January, the European Parliament adopted a resolution on the violation of human rights in Nagorno-Karabakh, calling for the lifting of the blockade, the setting up of a UN and OSCE humanitarian inquiry, and denouncing the inaction of the Russian peacekeeping forces. The entire international community has therefore been mobilized on this issue with a unanimous position. So the aim today, the hope that we can express, is for there to be an immediate normalization of the situation, with effective measures taken to restore the possibilities of movement in the Lachin corridor, and to resolve as quickly as possible the problems of food supplies, medicine and energy supply, and to thus avoid a humanitarian drama. The ball is in the court of the Azeri authorities. And there are two possibilities for them. Either they immediately provide proof of the falsity of the allegations that have been made, not only by words, but also based on an independent international observation on the spot in the next few days, according to arrangements to be discussed. Ideally, the co-rapporteurs of both countries in dispute should be allowed access to the corridor, or they proceed without delay and lift the existing blockade. It would certainly be very problematic to find out that this situation has caused a humanitarian tragedy. If that were to happen, the Azerbaijani authorities would then have to answer for it. Thank you very much indeed for your attention.
Merci à vous, Pierre-Alain. Now in the debate, I first call the 5 speakers on behalf of the political groups, and first speaker is Madam Boriana Aberg from Sweden on behalf of the EPP group. Boriana, you have the floor, 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. President, dear colleagues. It is with great sadness that we once again are debating about the humanitarian crisis in Nagorno-Karabakh. Yet again, the debate is at the bottom of the agenda and very few of the members of the Assembly are present. The suffering of 120,000 people of Nagorno-Karabakh deserve greater attention. But before anything else, they deserve that their fundamental human rights are respected. It's not a question of territorial integrity. It's not a question about Armenia or about Azerbaijan. It's a question of human rights. Since the Lachin corridor, the only road that links Nagorno-Karabakh and Armenia was blocked by so-called environmentalists on December 12, a humanitarian crisis has struck its residents. There is a shortage of food, and a Russian stamp-based system has since been introduced. Medicine, including for children and persons with long-term medical conditions, are largely unavailable. Furthermore, during the blockade, the gas supplies were disrupted on 2 occasions. In that also lies the problem of electricity supply after Azerbaijan damaged the only high-voltage power line which supplies Nagorno-Karabakh. The line is not restored yet, as the Azerbaijani forces did not allow reparation teams. People in Nagorno-Karabakh are freezing and starving in the darkness. This darkness also covers informational darkness, since one internet cable was cut by so-called activists on the 12th of January. Recently, the US Secretary of State Blinken spoke with Azerbaijan's President Aliyev to urge an immediate reopening of the Lachin corridor. Prior to that, the European Parliament approved a resolution in which it urged Azerbaijan to release Armenians prisoners of war, to withdraw its troops from Armenia's sovereign territory, and to open the Lachin corridor. The Secretary General of Council of Europe, the Commissioner of Human Rights, and the rapporteurs of Azerbaijan and Armenia also made statements about the blockade. Evidently, there is significant international pressure, further strengthened by the fact that the European Court of Human Rights indicated interim measures to Azerbaijan on this subject. Unfortunately, Azerbaijan has decided to ignore these pleas. Hence, I want to ask, what actions need to be taken in order for Azerbaijan to fulfill its commitments as a member of the Council of Europe?
Thank you very much, Boriana. Thank you very much. I have to be a bit strict, so to give as many possible speakers the floor. Prochain orateur est Monsieur Bertrand Bouix.
Your next speaker is Bertrand Bouix from France, speaking on behalf of the ALDE Group. Thank you very much indeed, President. Colleagues, this current affairs debate is absolutely crucial. The Lachin corridor is a lifeline for the people of Nagorno-Karabakh. It links Armenia to Nagorno-Karabakh, therefore affording access as well as supplies. In keeping with the trilateral declaration of the 9th of November 2020, the Republic of Azerbaijan undertook to guarantee security of the movement of people, vehicles and goods along the Lachin corridor in both directions. In the wake of a French initiative, the European political community met for the first time in Prague on the 6th of October in presence of the Armenian Prime Minister and the Azerbaijani President, and it permitted progress to be made, notably the deployment of an observation mission of the European Union. The Council of Europe, which of course is built on the bedrock of human rights and fundamental freedoms, must be able to participate in these observation missions and see for itself the state of play on the ground. At any event, for one thing, the serious hampering of transport along the corridor is leading to dire humanitarian repercussions for the local population. And it is impossible to imagine a situation in which people leave Nagorno-Karabakh because life has become impossible in the enclave. And any shift in the situation on the ground can only come about as a result of political dialogue between both parties. My own country, France, as a member of the Minsk Group, remains fully committed to supporting the negotiations which are currently underway following on from meetings in Brussels, Prague and Washington. When it comes to us as European countries, particularly EU members, we have to keep the advantage on both sides. We have to maintain cooperation, particularly economic cooperation. Azerbaijan, of course, supplies gas to the EU, but at the same time, we should remember that our continent is a community which shares respect for human rights, democratic principles, fundamental freedoms, and freedom of expression in particular. And that is why I hope that the Azerbaijani population, as well as Armenian people wherever they live, will be afforded those freedoms, and I call on the countries of our continent to commit to settling the conflict, which has been forgotten somewhat but has gone on for too long.
From the United Kingdom, and she speaks on behalf of the European Conservatives. Jill, you have the floor.
I'm deeply saddened to hear that hundreds of people have died in and around Nagorno-Karabakh in recent months, and that the situation there is degrading further. I understand that the origins of the conflict between Azerbaijan and Armenia in this region can be traced back almost a century, rekindled by the fall of the Soviet Union and boiling over into two terrible wars in the last 30 years. But what have these wars achieved? They've not yielded anything like a permanent settlement or a positive relationship between the countries. Even the prisoners of war are unreturned. If these countries want to live at peace with each other as good neighbours, they must find a way to talk to each other with honesty and in good faith. I call upon the governments of Azerbaijan and Armenia to engage with the efforts of the OSCE to secure peace and stability. What we have now is a slow march into a humanitarian disaster that we must avert. Regardless of their motives, the protesters blocking the Lachin corridor are only helping to worsen the growing crisis. I urge all parties to the trilateral statement of the 9th of November 2020 to reaffirm that the Republic of Azerbaijan shall guarantee safe movement of people, vehicles and cargo in both directions along the Lachin corridor. This is the key to keep the situation within the framework of the rules-based international order, as opposed to slipping back into further chaos and conflict. Any movement in that direction must be stopped. It is unthinkable that this region will enter into a further period of violent conflict, and what will happen to those who will pay the price if this happens. I urge Armenia and Azerbaijan to save their people from future further catastrophe. For people to live as neighbours tomorrow, they must act as friends now. I am in no doubt that rights and wrongs have been committed and suffered by both sides. But the only way to protect the innocents who will suffer the terrible and inevitable harms of conflict is by reconciliation and a willingness to move forward, drawing a line and creating a positive narrative. The first step is the reopening of the Lachin corridor. However, let me be clear. Reconciliation is a two-way street, and the corridor must be used for good intention only, the legitimate movement of people, goods and humanitarian aid, and not used as a cover for the movement of contraband, military or arms. Nothing can be gained from more agitation. Further violence begets further hatred, deeper resentment and a bleaker future for both countries. Let the opening of the Lachin corridor be a new beginning, a new chapter in sincere and honest negotiations to suture these wounds. Let us seize the opportunity to build a future where Armenians and Azeris can live peacefully as neighbours.
Thank you very much, Jill. Now we are going to listen to Mr. George Katrougalos from Greece, and he speaks on behalf of the Unified European Left. George?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. When we were discussing the situation in Kosovo, I mentioned the old saying that the Balkans have been the powder keg of Europe. Caucasus risks to be another area that could be explosive in the years to come for similar reasons: existence of minorities, disputed territories. We are not discussing here, of course, the geopolitical aspects of the conflict, just the humanitarian. But we must have in mind that in all situations, respect of international legality and what has been already agreed is fundamental. Here we have also the particularity that the facts are also disputed. The Azeri side denies there is a blockade. It is not meaningful to discuss if we do not have an agreement to the facts. And here I think that we can easily agree to the fact that blockade exists. The possibility of some vehicles of the Red Cross to carry some patients at life-threatening situation does not mean that the corridor is open. And the proof for that is that all sides that have a possibility to have a direct, let's say, understanding of the situation, like the United States or France, have already condemned this blockade. Our rapporteur has reminded us the harsh criticism of the American foreign minister, who cannot be accused to be one-sided or that he wants to promote the national interests of the one or the other side. And we have again, as previous speakers have said, also allegations that other aspects that guarantee a normal life to the citizens of Nagorno-Karabakh, like the provision of gas and electricity, are now blocked. So, my proposal is to endorse what the European Parliament has already endorsed. First of all, to condemn the blockade. It is self-evident. Then to ask all parties, and especially now Azerbaijan, because this is the party who seems not to implement the trilateral statement of the 9th November 2020, to fully respect it. And also to ask both parties not just to demonstrate restraint, but also to fully respect international legality. And also what has been agreed till far. For instance, the statement of Minsk Group co-chairs of the 15th of November. And also this organization can be a forum of reconciliation and not just a confrontation between the two countries involved. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, George. And now the last speaker on behalf of the political groups is Mr. Konstantinos Efstasiou from Cyprus, and he speaks on behalf of the group of Socialists, Democrats and Greens. Konstantinos.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. There are cases when we must be clear, when humanitarian issues are involved, we have to be rigid. That is why we call on the Azerbaijani authorities to ensure freedom of security of movement along the Lachin corridor in accordance with the trilateral statement of 9 November 2020. Restrictions to freedom of movement in this strip of land are causing significant distress to the local population and has the potential to create a humanitarian crisis. Access and supplies to the Nagorno-Karabakh must be unconditionally restored, and Azerbaijan must honor the trilateral agreement and guarantee the safety of people, vehicles and goods moving along the corridor. This is the sole road connecting Armenia to Nagorno-Karabakh. As a result of the blockade, thousands of people are stranded and unable to reach their homes, including children. This alarming situation threatens to derail the fragile peace process and may well lead to a resumption of violence. This could have disastrous consequences, impacting not only people of Armenia and Azerbaijan, but the wider South Caucasus region and beyond. As member states of the Council of Europe, in accordance with our values and principles, we call upon the Azerbaijani authorities to immediately open the corridor and desist from any action that could fuel further tensions in an already volatile situation. I have personally visited Azerbaijan twice, and I have never been to Armenia. I can assure that Azerbaijani people are gentle, polite, and tolerant. This is why I'm so frustrated with the situation in Lachin and the deliberate acts which seek to victimize amachos. Amachos is a Greek word for the people who do not carry arms and cannot defend themselves. That is a mother who cares for her children, the family man who cares for his parents, or the child that needs protection, food and shelter. Victimized just because they are Armenians or Christians. After all, we all deserve a better future in Europe and in the whole world worldwide, notwithstanding our ethnicity, nationality, language or religion. Leaving people starving, freezing without medicine, electricity, water supply, nor dignity actually amounts to an act of genocide. One of the elements defining genocide is deliberately inflicting harsh conditions of life calculated to bring about the physical destruction of a group. Dear colleagues, we are at the tipping point of the genocide. Let us not victimize people in order to gain political terms or for reasons of national interest. Every single person in this world deserves to live in dignity and in full respect of their human rights. The message must be clear. Stop the Lachin blockade.
Thank you, Konstantinos. Next in the debate, I call Mr. Kimmo Kiljunen from Finland. Kimmo.
Mr. President, I would like to start to saying pity, pity, pity. Session after session, at the final days, we have the discussion about the desperate conflict between two nations, Azeris, Armenians, who have lived centuries close to each other, that there is a war, tensions and problems. That is very pity. Now we do have the discussion about the potential major blockade of Lachin corridor and total blockade of the Nagorno-Karabakh as a whole. And obviously, if that is fully implemented, the blockade, there is a major humanitarian crisis, even catastrophe, which we will witness. So this is a very, very warning situation. Unfortunately, we hear contesting parties interpreting the situation totally differently. We will, and you will soon hear the interpretations and differences. We hear that the Lachin corridor is closed and no transport, including maybe a few ambulances, but no transport whatsoever. Nagorno-Karabakh is isolated also. Otherwise, the gas lines have been cut, the power lines have been also cut, etc., etc. Major problem, 120,000 people living in these type of conditions and isolation. That argument is there. And the other side is saying there is actually only control, that there will be no military traffic vis-a-vis from Armenia to Nagorno-Karabakh. Otherwise, no problems, supposed to be no problems. If there are problems, the problems are not Azeris. That's the argumentation. Azeris officials or even civic society people. The problems are Russians, Russian mafia, etc., etc. Even eco-activists have made the blockade there, etc. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. President, there is a total confusion. We have a confusion. My hope, my request is, let's have there an impartial international observation mission which observes the situation and verifies it. We with Boriana, we are ready. We are rapporteurs for Armenia. We are ready. I know also the rapporteurs for Azerbaijan are ready. We are ready to go in the region and assess the situation and tell you as much as we can know what are the real situation and facts. That I really ask that both parties would agree about that one. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Kimmo. Now we are going to listen to Mr.